Last week, we had on Hill Harper, who spoke about the importance of economic freedom and how the wealth disparity in America is a direct result of a history of racism. Now, a new study has sounded the alarms when it comes to the lack of diversity in Silicon Valley. BNC's Ansar Hassan has more.
Behind the big names of tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Apple lies a big concern: the lack of diversity in the workforce. A new report published in March by the Computing Technology Industry Association shows that the U.S. tech industry is made up of close to 12.5 million jobs. At close to $2 trillion, it accounts for 10% of U.S. GDP. When broken down further, black people make up 13% of the U.S. workforce, but fill 8% of tech jobs. Latinx are 16% of the labor force and only 7% of tech jobs. Yet those who have worked in tech say those numbers don't explain the whole story.
There is something about Silicon Valley, and there's something about the rigidity of our organizations out here that ultimately have caused this lack of representation and dire numbers to persist.
Sean Fletcher is professor of public relations at San Jose State University. He used to work at Apple, where he led the internal communications for all retail divisions.
So effectively, the internal inside the organization version of external public relations.
At Apple, Dr. Fletcher mentored students from historically black colleges who participated in summer programs. It was part of Apple's $40 million partnership with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. What he learned had to do with the culture of big tech.
There were many other socioeconomic disadvantages. There were many other inequitable barriers to successfully navigating Silicon Valley that had nothing to do with our skill set.
Fletcher refutes the idea that there's a pipeline problem, meaning that there are not enough students from underrepresented communities graduating with advanced tech degrees. He says while Silicon Valley isn't immune to structural racism, he argues retention is just as big a problem for the lack of diversity.
Feeling as though you have to bear the culture tax, like many underrepresented groups do, of trying to explain who you are and why you're there and what makes you qualified to be there.
Dr. Fletcher says he's keenly aware that tech's top management and leadership is still dominated by white men. He adds, while Silicon Valley does provide economic opportunities for all groups, the idea of rewarding employees with big salaries isn't enough.
If you stay there, we'll never solve the issue.